Let's dive right into this because we are stepping into what is absolutely a completely transformative era for Peter Parker. We're picking up the pieces exactly 4 years after Doctor Strange cast that massive world-altering spell. You remember the one? The spell that completely erased Peter Parker's existence from everyone's memory. That means we are looking at 4 years of total crushing anonymity. 4 straight years of carrying the entire weight of New York City entirely on his own 2 shoulders. We are no longer dealing with the eager, wide-eyed high school kid who is desperately looking for a mentor in Tony Stark. No, we are looking at a deeply changed, profoundly isolated hero. And we are immediately thrown into exactly what that extreme isolation looks like on a day-to-day basis. We immediately find Peter acting as a full-time, profoundly lonely neighborhood Spider-Man. Without the Avengers, without any kind of supportive network, his entire existence has basically just become the mask. There's no separation anymore. We're plunged right into this brutal, nocturnal aerial battle with the Hand Ninjas. Now, if you know the Hand, you know they are a deeply challenging enemy to face, right? They've got this dark, mystical backing and relentless hive mind tactics that just never stop. But what truly resonates here, what really hits you in the gut, isn't just the sheer danger of the combat itself. It's the deafening silence radiating from Peter. Think about it. There's absolutely no one in the comms. There's no backup on the way. It is literally just him, throwing himself into this dangerous war night after night, almost as if he's using the fighting to avoid dealing with the crushing emptiness of his personal life. I am absolutely blown away by how his fighting style has evolved here. The complete loss of Stark Tech has forced Peter to rely entirely on his raw, physical spider abilities, and it has pushed his biological mutation to absolute limits we've never seen before. In this opening sequence, he effortlessly executes these highly complex wall runs, vaulting off surfaces and pulling off mid-air flips that are so incredibly fast and precise, he genuinely surprises himself. You really have to consider the intense muscle memory we are witnessing. He has been doing literally nothing but patrolling and fighting for 4 straight years. His body has adapted out of sheer survival necessity. His agility has completely peaked, and he is moving with this lethal fluidity that shows us his powers are operating on a completely different frequency now. It's like watching a master artist at work, but the canvas is a war zone. But let me explain how this intense isolation triggers something genuinely terrifying. Back in the deafening quiet of his empty apartment, Peter sits down and watches an old video of Ned and MJ talking about MIT. The profound emotional weight of everything he has lost just completely crashes down on him. And what's fascinating and terrifying is that this deep psychological pain acts directly as a catalyst for a biological rebellion. As he reaches over to strap on his classic mechanical web shooter, his own body violently reacts. Out of nowhere, a sudden explosive eruption of black organic webbing blasts the mechanical device completely off his wrist. It sends it flying across the room. It is such a visceral, shocking moment because it shows us that his trauma isn't just in his head anymore. His own body is changing, adapting to his ongoing grief in a way he simply cannot control. So let's really talk about this biological mutation, because what makes it so fascinating is its sheer raw power. This organic webbing is just pouring out of his body. It is a completely natural biological process now, and Peter is entirely incapable of suppressing it. And it is immensely more powerful than his classic synthetic fluid. The tensile strength on this stuff is literally off the charts. Think back to that fight with the Hand Ninjas we just talked about. This new organic webbing is strong enough to rip a reinforced sword straight out of a mystical ninja's grip like it's nothing. But the real terror for Peter? It's the absolute total lack of control. His body is producing this independently, and the more stressed out he gets, the more volatile and unpredictable this mutation becomes. He is a passenger in his own body. So what exactly does a brilliant scientific mind do when their own biology goes rogue? Seeking answers, Peter visits literally the one man on the planet who understands monstrous, uncontrollable biological mutations better than anyone else, Bruce Banner. Peter is desperate. He asks Bruce if there's any possible way to keep the beneficial parts of this new mutation while suppressing the terrifying, uncontrollable aspects. And this conversation leads to a brilliant, albeit desperate, piece of engineering. Peter ends up utilizing these stark, glowing green light suppressors right on his wrists. They look and act exactly like makeshift tourniquets for his superpowers. They aren't meant to shoot webs at all. They are designed as a literal dam, desperately trying to hold back the overwhelming biological changes surging through his forearms. The tension in this interaction with Bruce is just perfectly balanced. Bruce casually shows off his own wrist containment device, and you get this brief moment of them bonding over the shared, heavy burden of unstable biology, but then Bruce drops this deeply unsettling joke. He looks dead at Peter, completely straight-faced, and says, "If this breaks, you better run." And then he just lets out this raw, incredibly scary, guttural roar. It's played off as a quick moment of levity between two seasoned scientists, but let's be real here. It perfectly foreshadows the absolute chaos that is about to follow. Because when a man who literally houses the Hulk tells you to run if the suppressor breaks, yeah, you listen. That underlying threat hangs so heavy over the entire rest of the narrative. Naturally, Peter inevitably has to field test these volatile new powers, and I want to draw your attention to how disastrous the results are. There's this chaotic, high-speed montage where he attempts to swing through the city with these new, ultra-fast organic webs, and it is a mess. All those years of finely tuned muscle memory we talked about, they mean absolutely nothing right now, because the velocity and the tension of these natural webs are entirely different from his synthetic formula. He loses total control. He violently crashes straight through the window of this fancy dinner party, shattering glass absolutely everywhere, before completely stumbling out into the street where he very nearly gets run over by oncoming traffic. It's a stark, scary reminder that right now, Peter Parker is in active danger to himself and everyone around him. And just as Peter is dealing with this massive internal crisis, the external stakes completely skyrocket. Jean Grey enters the narrative, and she is acting as a terrifying Omega-level threat. Let me explain exactly what that means in this context. We're talking about an intensely powerful entity, capable of massive, overwhelming psychic attacks. She doesn't even need to be in the same zip code to fight him. She literally taunts Peter by possessing innocent New Yorkers right on the street. She freezes them in place, turns their eyes completely blank, and speaks directly through their mouths just to mock him. It is straight-up psychological horror. He can't just punch his way out of this one. He's fighting an enemy that exists inside the very minds of the public he's trying to protect. Jean quickly proves exactly why she carries that Omega-level title, and the escalation here is terrifyingly rapid. In a move that is highly reminiscent of Scarlet Witch messing with the Avengers back in Age of Ultron, Jean reaches directly into Bruce Banner's mind. She uses him as a massive conduit to fight Peter. Within a minute, this terrifying Grey Hulk emerges, a bigger, meaner, and completely unhinged version of the monster we know. And the devastation is absolute. This Grey Hulk drops a devastating, shockwave-inducing thunderclap that completely obliterates and collapses an entire building right in the middle of the city. The raw destructive power on display in this moment instantly changes the entire landscape of the story. The stakes are suddenly life or death for the whole city. Now, smoothly transitioning from that city-level destruction to the emotional core of the story, we get a profoundly moving discovery. Peter secretly peers into Ned's bedroom, and what we find covering the walls is it's heartbreaking. Ned's room is completely covered in this chaotic detective board. We're talking newspaper clippings, red string, Easter eggs, all meticulously tracking Spider-Man's movements across the globe. Despite having absolutely zero memory of Peter Parker existing, the massive void left behind by his absence is something that is subconsciously desperately trying to fill. What is so incredibly brilliant and sad here is understanding exactly why Ned is doing this. Ned actually remembers the events perfectly. He remembers Spider-Man showing up at the Washington Monument. He remembers Spider-Man fighting in London. He distinctly remembers that this masked hero saved his life. He is actively, obsessively hunting the hero just so he can say thank you. It is a deeply tragic irony. Ned is entirely unaware that the mythical savior he is desperately searching for is actually his forgotten, deeply lonely best friend who is standing right there in the shadows, quietly watching him. It really hits you right in the feelings. Meanwhile, the psychological torment from Jean Grey continues to escalate to a boiling point. When Jean casually threatens to pay MJ a visit, Peter completely drops everything. His unpredictable biological mutation, the rampaging Grey Hulk tearing up the city, none of it matters anymore. He grabs MJ for a desperate sweeping swing through the city skyline. It really echoes that romantic ending of Far From Home, right? But this time it is laced with pure dread. He knows for a fact he can't outfight a psychic god. So he takes her to literally the only logical sanctuary a non-magical hero can think of, the Punisher. He drops her off in his heavily fortified armory, desperately hoping that overwhelming brute force and heavy firepower can somehow protect her from a psychic assault.
But as you'll see, we quickly realize that the Punisher's guns and tactical arsenal mean absolutely nothing against an Omega-level mutant. This is proven in a staggering, breathtaking visual sequence where Jean Grey just unleashes a massive, city-wide psychic blast. This invisible shockwave silently rolls over the streets, and it literally freezes every single person in New York City entirely in place. We are talking about millions of people, locked completely inside their own minds, suspended in time like statues. The sheer unfathomable scale of this power renders any conventional weapons completely useless. It is an eerie, terrifying display of absolute dominance. There is nowhere left to hide.
Amidst this chilling citywide paralysis, we get this quietly profound, heartbreaking narrative beat. With the city entirely silent, frozen in time around him, Peter visits Aunt May's grave. He kneels down, kisses his hand, and gently touches her headstone. And as he does, we actually hear her voice. Her final words of encouragement echo in his mind, telling him to keep doing the right thing, no matter the cost. It is the exact emotional anchor he so desperately needs in this impossible moment. Even from beyond the grave, Aunt May's moral compass is quite literally the only thing keeping Peter from completely breaking under this immense, suffocating pressure. Fueled entirely by this encouragement, Peter throws himself back into the fray, and the action ramps up to an 11. We get this electrifying, breathless sequence set inside a massive prison complex. Peter goes toe-to-toe with an entire squad of those synchronized hand ninjas. They attack in perfect unison, but Peter, completely leading into his newly augmented speed and reflexes, meets them head-on. He runs horizontally along the prison walls, seamlessly dodging blades, and countering with a perfect, brutal combat rhythm. It is like a violent ballet. It perfectly emphasizes how his evolved combat style and those 4 long years of constant fighting have turned him into a truly flawless, lethal combatant. And then we finally reach the absolute climax of his physical arc. Peter's biological mutation, which has been stressed to its absolute breaking point by this insane gauntlet he's been running, builds up and finally explodes. He unleashes a massive, entirely uncontrollable organic web tornado. Thick, black, biological webbing violently spirals outward, totally encompassing the entire area. What is so striking about this moment is how this visual directly mirrors the Grey Hulk's building collapse from earlier. Both of these heroes, overwhelmed by powers they simply cannot contain, become forces of sheer destructive nature. It perfectly represents Peter's internal chaos finally spilling out and physically manifesting in the world. After surviving this absolutely insane onslaught, the suffocating tension of the story is briefly broken by a much-needed moment of levity. Before the final blackout, Peter takes a second to stretch out his deeply battered muscles. He cracks his back, lets out a groan, and mutters a joke about his age, saying, "I have to stretch, I'm not in high school anymore." It's a humorous but highly grounding reminder for us. He isn't that bouncy, indestructible kid from Queens we met years ago. He is a seasoned, weary veteran who deeply feels every single punch, crash, and fall the morning after. But before we wrap up, let me leave you with this massive final takeaway, because amidst all this chaos, a narrative-defining detail is revealed. Another character explicitly states that Peter is the only person in the entire city who is immune to Jean Grey's psychic possessions. Think about that. An Omega-level threat who can casually freeze millions of minds in an instant simply cannot break into us. Why? Based on everything we know about Peter's biology and his established history, I strongly believe I know exactly why he is completely immune to the psychic invasion. Let's look back years ago to his conflict with Doctor Strange. Remember when Strange pushed Peter's astral form entirely out of his physical body, yet miraculously his physical body just kept moving, perfectly dodging Strange's magic to protect the box. It all clicks together. Peter's spider sense isn't just an early warning system for physical danger. It autonomously acts as an ultimate impenetrable shield. It actually fortifies his nervous system against magical and psychic attacks, rejecting foreign intrusions entirely on a subconscious level. It's a brilliant piece of lore that perfectly explains why Spider-Man is uniquely equipped to stand against a psychic god. So ask yourself, if his spider sense is mutating and evolving right alongside his physical webs, just how powerful is Peter Parker truly about to become? Seriously, let that sink in.